first turn our attention to the story that dominated this week's news coverage, that of the anniversary of D-Day. And let's go straight to Harold Nash, who's calling us from Worcestershire. Good afternoon, Harold.
Good afternoon.
Now, I understand that you were actually a navigator in World War II.
That's right. But apart from that, I'm somewhat unhappy about the way we think about the chaps who died. Lots of them were wonderful fellows. Now, I'm not criticizing the men who went to the Normandy shore. They're good men, and amongst them, men of great courage, but some also shuffling into nostalgia, as I do, perhaps. But I'm not happy about the way we remember the fallen. I mean, all the pomp and circumstance, the ceremony, the military fanfares, the salutes, were using the very paraphernalia which killed them. And to go, I have a long story, but I'll keep to the one point. My pilot was a rather wonderful chap, and we were hit. Now, he couldn't bail out because the upper gunner's parachute was torn to shreds. And I gave him his parachute. That was the arrangement between us. And I remember him still, that calm look on his face. He was only 23, an Australian. He knew he was going to die. And he nodded his thanks. And I bailed out. Now, I don't need trumpets. I don't need military men. I don't need salutes to remember him. I remember him almost every day now, in my early 90s. And I was one of 3 survivors. On that evening, 3 of our Halifax bombers were shot down, 21 rather wonderful chaps. Out of the 21, just 3 of us survive. And to me, it seems wrong to think about them only with guns. Somehow, it's saying that killing is good. When I was a kiddie, I used to try and get my father, who was in the Royal Artillery, to talk about the war. He seldom did. But I remember how my brother and I used to listen to the cenotaph ceremony each year, and we'd see the soldiers locally, with the bayonets and the drill, and it all seemed to me to be rather wonderful. And this form of ceremony is somehow saying, in spite of the words of sorrow we say, in spite of the regrets, and that it may not happen again, we are somehow magnifying. We're making it seem rather, it made me think there was something rather wonderful, something heroic in killing. And the whole way we approach these things rather upsets me in a way.
Mr. Nash, every so often we get a call on this programme which just makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, and yours is one such. May I ask a little more about your own story? You talked about that dreadful moment when your pilot handed you the parachute, knowing
when I handed him the parachute.
When you handed him the parachute,
yes.
At what age were you, and what kind of...
19.
19.
We were all youngsters, all youngsters. Until when I was shot down, 3 days I tried to get to Holland. I was a coward, I was afraid the whole time. They picked me up, took me through the Ruhr area. This was the end of 1943. And there were ruins everywhere, and I'd taken part in making them. Opposite me were 3 women dressed in black, mourning. Had they lost a father, a brother, a husband? I didn't know. At first they looked at me with hard looks. My guard was at my side. And we were in the train for 3 hours. And after 2 hours or so, they began to talk to each other yet again, looking at me. And suddenly one of them pulled out a piece of bread and offered me this bread. And the guard said no. At 9, I didn't get my bread. But it made me think later, 10 years later, happily married. I was a teacher, working with youngsters, working with hope, working with the future. The gesture of these 3 women whom I tried to kill and whose compatriots I tried to kill, in return had offered me bread. And I still think of Albert Schweitzer's words, the strongest weapon you can use against an enemy is love, caring for mankind. And it's grown with me and with the youngsters I worked with.
Yeah.
I know no government can think like that. No military man can think like that. I know that. And if people want to go and do it, I would never try to stop them. But that's my point of view. And I do feel with all the killing and all the government's declarations, there should be someone, somewhere, even if it's a tiny voice, which says no.
Mr. Nash, it is an honour and a privilege to speak to you today. Thank you very much indeed. And I can just tell you that your call has...